So how much should you spend to acquire one lead? Now this is one of the toughest questions that faces any business builder because it will depend on your industry and of course the value of your product or service and of course the margin, yes, the profit, because you don't want to be spending more money than you are making, right, on your marketing. But you know what, if you can get your fundamental numbers sorted, if you can get your funnel in place, then you can start to make predictions and you can get a positive ROI on your marketing spend and consistently increase your budget with a consistently positive return. Here's how it usually works. A business starts off with a website. Now this website, this hypothetical website, attracts 1,000 visitors a month. From these 1,000 visitors, this particular website might secure 100 leads. So that might be that visitors are offered an ebook, maybe they're invited to participate in a webinar, or maybe it's just the contact us form on the bottom of the page. 1,000 visitors translates to, say, 100 leads. From these 100 leads, let's assume that 10 meetings are booked, 10 appointments are made. Now in the scenario here, I'm thinking about a consultancy or a B2B business. Now this is a business where the deal, the handshake is made offline, the service is provided, and then an invoice is sent. Now, if you're in a B2C environment or a B2B environment where the transaction is taken online, you can truncate this process here. 1,000 visitors might translate to 100 leads, which might translate to 100 sales. So let's assume that these are meetings, meeting appointments. 1,000 visitors, 100 leads, 10 meeting appointments. Of those 10 meeting appointments, we wind up with, say, 2 clients. That would be a pretty poor strike rate to meet with 10 people and only get 2 clients out of it. But for the purposes of a simple hypothetical instruction, that works for me. So now it gets a little bit more complex because you need to be able to apply this sort of thinking to your own business. Now let's assume that one client is worth $10,000 in its first month. $10,000 in its first month. That's how much a client is worth. The next question that you want to know is, well, what's the margin? What's the profit on a $10,000 a month client? Let's just assume it's 50%. So the margin is 5K, right? That's the margin, 5K. That's the profit margin. We've got 2 particular clients here that we've got from this exercise. So we know that we're making 10K in profit. Now, if we wanted to break even, we can look at this 10K in profit and say, that's how much we would spend to acquire our traffic. That works out to be $10 a visitor and $100 a lead, if you want to break even. But of course, none of us want to break even, do we? So we look at this 10,000, which is our profit, and we say, you know what, I'm prepared to sacrifice 50% of my margin to bring in new business. So 50% of the margin here, of our 10,000 margin, would be 5K. Which means, how much can we spend on traffic? Well, that drops to $5, and that drops to something like $50. Now there's one more element to this equation that smart and savvy business builders factor in, and that is the lifetime value of a customer. So if someone is worth $10,000 in their first month, delivering a margin of $5,000 in their first month, what's the value over the lifetime of that particular customer? Let's assume that an average customer sticks around for 10 months and the contract works out to be the same amount every month for that 10-month period. So when we look at that, say it's $5,000 in margin a month, over the lifetime, over the 10-month life cycle of that customer, that works out to be $50,000. Now $50,000 is the lifetime value of the customer. Suddenly these numbers change somewhat and you can spend quite a little bit more to acquire a lead. So in my world, if I'm dealing with a bank is willing to spend up to $500 for a lead because they know the lifetime value of a customer and they know very well what their conversion rates between a lead and a customer is likely to be. They've got the history so that they can measure this sort of stuff. If it's a smaller business, it averages between $100 and $250. But you know what? If you're starting out in this sort of, having a crack at this sort of stuff for the first time, perhaps try and acquire a lead for something around the $50 mark. That's reasonable. Organisations, including organisations like Antil, will listen up and they'll pay attention. Any less than that, you might start to encounter some trouble. Now, there's one more thing I'd like you to consider. 100 leads a month might just be too many for your business, depending on how you go about converting those leads into prospects and customers. Now, if you're using one of my endless loop strategies where it's all automated using things like autoresponder sequences, you can process more than 100 a month. You can process a lot more. But if your process still involves picking up the phone, saying g'day, going and having a meeting, 100 a month is probably too many. But this is good news if you're starting out. So for example, if in our hypothetical scenario you're willing to spend, say, $50 on a lead, you might be able to narrow this element down, simplify this to 20 leads a month. 20 leads times 50 equals $1,000. That is a reasonable budget for most organisations. 20 leads, if 20 leads translates to 5 meetings, and 5 meetings translates to 1 customer, and if 1 customer is worth more than $1,000 to your business in its first month, I hope, or maybe even it might even be $10,000 of the lifetime value of the customer, you're ahead.